Good morning, LearningGate students. This is Mr. Jim. We're out doing a little bit of seining and exploring the marine environment for our virtual beach field trip. I know you guys would all much rather be here at the beach yourselves, but you know, you can't do that. You got to stay safe. So I'm going to go do the exploring for you, and we're going to film whatever we find out here. So we got two major activities out here. One is called seining, and we're going to use a big net. We're going to pull it out through the seagrass, which I'll show you here in a minute. And we're going to pull up, see what kind of animals we can find. And then after we do that, we're going to do something called sieving, which is looking down in the mud down here, the sediment, and see what kinds of animals these shorebirds, migratory shorebirds, wintering shorebirds, are feeding on. Things like worms and clams and crabs and things like that. So hopefully we'll have a good morning. It's a beautiful morning, and we're going to see what we can find. So here we go. All right, good morning, LearningGate students. This is our equipment that we're using on our virtual beach field trip. We have our 30-foot long seine net, which is right there. Okay, you'll see that in operation. Hopefully we'll catch some really cool animals. And we also have the square, what's called a sieve, and you'll see how we work that. We'll be digging in the sand and seeing what kind of cool animals are digging around in the mud. And we have a couple of D-frame nets and other nets. Then of course we always have our white buckets and some other smaller buckets, and bug boxes and things like that, so we can get a closer look at some of the interesting marine creatures that we find here at Howard Park. Now take a look at our location here. You can see the tide's fairly low, so we've got a nice sandbar to pull up. And we've got, you see that dark area way out there? That is seagrass, so that's where a lot of the really cool animals hang out. Things like baby shrimp, maybe even pipefish, and if we're really lucky, we might even catch a seahorse. So that's sort of one thing that we really hope for. But we're going to take a look and see what we can find here. All right, here's our seine net, and we've got it rolled up. I believe it's about 30 feet long, and we've got tubes on either end. And the way this net works is you've got floats on the top, and then on the bottom you have these little lead weights, and that keeps it right on the bottom. So believe it or not, the fish could swim right underneath the net if we're not careful. So I'll have one end, Mr. Burt will take the other. He'll be the deep man. So basically all you have to do is stretch it out. You bounce it on the bottom, you have your floats on top, your lead weights on the bottom, and then when we walk around, we're going to point the bottom forward so that we make like a scoop, and we're going to scoop around. But actually what we're going to do is we're going to go out into the seagrasses. So let's try this out. All right, so go on out. We want to go into the seagrasses. Yeah, go to your left a little bit. You want to pull through the seagrass. Yep, it's going to get a little bit of mucky. All right, but that's where all the cool animals are. Just make sure you do your stingray shuffle. You don't want to accidentally step on a stingray. That would ruin our day. All right. Okay. So now with me, and then we'll pull it straight towards the camera there. And sometimes if you look very carefully, you can see swimming in front of the net because they don't want to get caught. So we're scooping around, we're going right through that seagrass. That's where a lot of these animals are living. Now when Mr. Burt gets to the edge of the seagrass, we're going to pull the net right towards him. Again, point your bottom forward so it makes a scoop. There you go. All right, now we're going to start pulling forward. And keep bouncing it on the bottom, because if we lift it up, those fish that are swimming ahead of us will go right under that net. All right, we're going to pull it to the right of the bucket there. This is less than ideal because of the long stretch, but keep pulling. All right, keep pulling. We're gonna pull it all the way out of the water. All right. Okay, so when you get up there, just kind of get away from me. We'll pull it till the net's all the way out of the water. Right here is perfect, right there, stop. All right, so bring our bucket over. We're gonna see what we caught. This is just our first try. We're gonna do this a bunch of times. Ooh. All right, let me get the camera so we can see it. You wanna keep the fish on the net. We're just gonna take out the biggest ones and anything different that we see. Like look right there, I see a pipefish right there. You gotta be careful, they have spines. This is a pipefish, look at that guy. He is a cousin of the seahorse, look at that. We'll take a closer look at him later. All right, these are pinfish with the vertical stripes that go up and down. There we go. Anybody else? I saw a lizardfish in here. Oh, we got a baby needlefish. Let's get a bigger one of those. Oh, there's a needlefish over there. Grab the needlefish. Here's a baby needlefish. All right, we got some little guys in here. Nothing. Another spot. Now what we're gonna do now is you and I are gonna take a look and see what kind of cool animals we caught. Now, if you look down in here, let's see what we've got. In our bucket, we've got, most of these are very small fish, but what I'm gonna do is I'll put them in different containers. Maybe we'll take them out so you can see them better. Let's see. All right, so let's start with one of the more common bait fish. It's called a pinfish. And if you look right here, they have stripes on them. Let's see, gotta be able to catch them first. There you go, you see that? See the stripes on them? That's why they call them a pinfish, because this fin on the top has needle sharp or pin sharp needles in them. Yeah, spines. All right, so take a good close look at that. That's called a pinfish. Now they're one of the most important fish in the estuary because they're food for so many other animals. Things like the birds, the terns you see flying around here, bigger fish like sea trout, snook, redfish, things like that. All of those animals eat pinfish. So that's one common fish here. Another one that's really cool, it looks like a piece of grass. You see that right there? That is actually a fish, that right there. Even though here's a piece of grass, this is called a needlefish. And they can get a couple feet long. Here's a bigger one right here. Let's see if we can get them. Now they're called needlefish because they have needle sharp teeth. They're actually a predator, so they actually eat smaller fish. And they're really fast, as you can see, hard to catch. They're really tough to catch. There you go. So there's a needlefish. Long, skinny, they're really fast swimmers. And they swim across the top. All right, let's see what Mr. Burt caught. Oh, look at that. He caught a shrimp. Where'd he go? All right. So we'll get that into a little container here in a minute. All right, let's stop this. All right, so one of the fish that we caught is called a pinfish. And you know it's a pinfish because they're not real big and they have vertical stripes that go up and down. And that helps them camouflage in with the seagrasses. Now what they get their name from is if you look at the fin on the top of the fish, when he spreads it out, they have these needle-like pin spines in the top of them. So if you ever have to grab a pinfish, you never want to grab it from the top because it will stab you with those pins. So that's one of the most common fish that we get in our seagrass areas, very well camouflaged. They're an important bait fish. People use them for bait, but they also feed a lot of other animals, everything from snook and redfish to dolphins and things like that. So that's a pretty neat fish. One other thing that you can look at is the shape of the fish. So here we have what's called a pipefish. They're cousins to the seahorses. And if you look closely at its mouth, we'll take a quick look at him. This guy, All right, so one of the most interesting fish is the pipefish. And if you look here in the bag, we've got a pipefish. It's long and skinny. If you look at its mouth, it looks just like a seahorse. They're cousins to the seahorse. And they eat plankton, very small animals, zooplankton. They just suck them up in their mouth. And the shape is just like a piece of grass, a blade of grass. So they blend in very well. Very, very good camouflage. Now this is another long skinny fish, but instead of floating up and down, it's actually a horizontally skinny fish. This is called a needlefish. They get their name from their needle-sharp teeth, and they are predators. They eat smaller fish. They're very, very fast swimmers, very fast swimmers. All right, so there's our needlefish right there. You can see him using his pectoral fins on the side to move. And that beak is long and pointed with lots of very sharp teeth. All right, so here we have two different kinds of fish. One you should already know, the pipefish, or I'm sorry, the pinfish is the larger one with the stripes that go up and down, the vertical stripes. Look at this guy here. He's got horizontal stripes that go side to side. I don't know how well you can see that guy, but different form of camouflage. Where is he? There he is. Look at him. So even the stripes even go right through his eye, so helps him blend in so he doesn't get eaten by some of the bigger fish. All right, so here we have two different kinds of fish. That's kind of cool that they're standing right next, or they're swimming right next to each other. Let's get the grass out of the way. Take a look, right there. So on the right, or the bottom, you've got a fish called a lizardfish. They're called lizardfish because their head is shaped just like a lizard. Now this other one, and the lizardfish is a predator. It's camouflaged on the top. You see that? And it looks just like the sand. And then it waits for a fish to come by, and then it grabs them. Now the other fish there is a cousin of the seahorse. You see it's called a pipefish, and it looks like a blade of grass, which is pretty cool. Very, very cool. And it has a very small mouth. Its mouth is like a tube, like a straw, and it can only eat tiny, tiny little plankton, little tiny shrimps and crabs and other animals that float by. But their camouflage is they look just like, oh wow, Mr. Burt just brought in a really cool fish. Not even sure what it is. Oh, that I haven't seen in a long time. That, my friend, I believe is a toadfish. Normally you see this kind of fish right in the oyster bars. So, and we're gonna have to look this one up because it's got some modeling on it, different camouflage. Didn't it have legs on the bottom? Looked kind of like it had little legs on the bottom.
Long dorsal.
Yeah, long fin, pectoral fin. Yeah, look at that. That is a really neat fish. I don't think I've ever seen one of those around here. I used to see these in Naples a lot. Wow, that's a cool fish. All right, so that's neat. All right, so let's see. We also have some grass here. See the grass? This is called turtle grass. See how wide it is? There's a couple different kinds of seagrass that are growing in our shallow coastal waters. This is called turtle grass. You have manatee grass and you have shoal grass. See, this other grass is really thin. Okay, different kinds of grass. And you got different kinds of animals living in the grass. All right, so we've got our pipefish, needlefish, lizardfish, shrimp. Here's another fish we haven't talked about yet. That's pretty neat. They're not the best swimmers, but they have another way of defending themselves. Check this guy out. Let's see if you can see him. He's right there. This is called a smooth pufferfish. Let's see what happens when he gets threatened. He'll blow up. He'll look like a little marble. And then all of a sudden, fish won't be able to eat him because he's bigger than they thought he was. Okay, so that's a pufferfish, and that's how they protect themselves. I'm gonna put him back in the water so he doesn't get hurt. All right, so there we go. All right, we got some pretty cool animals here. All right, so the fish we caught the most of is this Atlantic silverside. They have a very prominent stripe, silver stripe down the side, and they are fish that swim in large schools. So that's another adaptation for staying away from predators, is safety in numbers. So we caught, I don't know, 100 of them maybe. We only kept 1 or 2 to show you. So they eat very small plants, things that are floating around in the water. So very pretty fish. Well, we took out our nets out into the seagrass and we found 2 different kinds of shrimp. One is called the pink shrimp and one is called the grass shrimp. Let's take a closer look at them. Here's a cool animal that, look at that. That is a baby shrimp. And let's open the top of the container. See if you can see that. See that guy? You can see his eyes on both sides of his head there. That is a baby shrimp. Now a lot of animals, blue crabs, shrimp, things like that, when they are young, they live in the estuary. And then as they grow up, get bigger, they move out into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's a pretty cool animal. They are scavengers, so they eat dead fish and they feed on the plants in the seagrass. All right, now we're going to switch activities. We're going to switch over to the sieving activity. We're going to be looking at the environment right along the water's edge. But if you look closely at some of the shells that you see on the beach, sometimes you'll find some that look like this. He's got a hole drilled in them. That actually, this clam, this had 2 sides to it. This was actually eaten by a snail. And the snail has a mouth that's like a drill. And it just drills right through the shell and it sucks out the animal inside. Pretty amazing. But most people don't realize what's going on right here in the shallow waters of Tampa Bay. So we're gonna do some sieving here. My friend Bert's gonna demonstrate. All right, so he's gonna go out where it's a little muddier. And this is something you can do with your family anytime you get to the beach, whenever you can get to the beach. That's good right there. It doesn't need to be very deep. You just have a little sieve, just let it float on the surface, and then all you have to do is dig. And I know you guys are really good at digging. So the more sand that you dig up and put in your sieve, the better. Now, once you cover your whole sieve with sand, you're gonna swish it back and forth, and you can use your hand. Don't let the sand or the animals go over the side though. And you're going to swish it back and forth. And then we're going to look and see, well, what kind of animals live in here? Because these birds that we've been seeing, they've been poking their beak down into the sand. Well, you know what? They're looking for animals to feed on. Crabs, worms, things like that. Now, let's see what we've got here. All right. So,
horseshoe crab.
Is it a baby? Is it alive?
Yep.
Where? Right oh my goodness, look at this. We got 2. Holy cow, I don't know if I've seen these before. Look at that. I've seen big ones. This is a horseshoe crab. These are babies. Not sure how old they might be. They're only, what, about half an inch long? Look at that. Very cute. And we caught 2 or 3 of them. So they're actually living here in the sandy shorelines there. Look at that. Pretty neat animals. Look at that. You can even see his little tail, called a telson. Wow, I didn't expect that. You never know what you're going to find. That's the cool thing about exploring nature. Anything else? Oh, this is neat too. It's not a lot. Oh, grab that right there. The one that looks like an ice cream cone. All right, so right here, you have one animal living on top of another. This is a clam, or was a clam, had 2 shells, and since it probably died, this other animal, the barnacle, actually attached to it. And these are no longer alive, it doesn't look like. All right, but the barnacles have to attach to something, and then they feed on plankton. So they actually have a foot that looks like a feather, and when the water's covering them, they put it out, and that's how they feed. They filter feed. Now, this is one of the things that we were looking for. I think this is called an ice cream cone worm, but I could just be making that up. All right, this is one of the tube worms. Now, this would live down in the sand, in the mud, and I don't want to open it up because it will kill the worm. But if you look here at the top, what happens is when they're stuck in the mud, in the sand, they filter feed too. So they stick out part of their body and they actually catch their food as it floats by. That's really neat. Boy, Bert, you're hired. He's good at finding cool stuff. We've already found some neat animals. All right, let's see what else we can. So after sieving with our square sieve here for a little while, we caught some interesting things. And they're here in our bucket. One animal that we found, or part of an animal, is this old skin from a horseshoe crab. And horseshoe crabs are actually more closely related to spiders and scorpions than they are to crabs. They have a sharp pointed tail called the telson. They have very primitive eyes, see right there. And if you look, this is the shed skin. This isn't the dead animal. See how it's split right here? That's how the animal grows. It splits its old shell and then crawls out. And the other cool thing about them is they have special kinds of gills called book gills. They look like pages in the book, pages in a book. So that's a shed exoskeleton from a horseshoe crab. Another thing that we caught right here is a tube from a parchment tube worm. And the neat thing about these is they actually have decorated their tube with little bits of pieces of shell, which is pretty neat that they find in their environment. Let's see what else we caught. Right, so our last animal that we found is it's a type of snail. This is called a king's crown conch, and you can see where it gets its name from these sharp spines on the shell there. This guy's alive, so that's the snail right there, and he's closing up. He's got a trap door, this right here. You see that hard shell right there? That's called the operculum, and that'll close up and protect his soft foot from a predator like me. We'll toss him back. All right, another animal that you're going to find in the shallow water and the seagrasses are the hermit crabs. Most people know about hermit crabs. These guys actually don't make the shell that they live in. They actually pick it up from snails that are living in the mud. And then when the snails are no longer alive and needing their shell, the crab will move in. And then as they get bigger, they'll have to move to a bigger shell. So this is a little hermit crab. They're pretty neat. All right, well, we found a couple other things that I wanted to show you and tell you a little bit about. Okay, here, you may notice that there are a lot of black specks out in the beach here, right along the shelly area. And look right here, these are snails. So there are thousands and thousands of snails here. These are auger snails, I believe, and they are feeding on algae that's in the sand. So the sand, you may look at some sand, maybe when you're digging a sandcastle, and you might find some colored sand, like green or red sand. Well, that is actually a plant that's inside the sand. It's actually in between the sand, and that's called algae. And these guys eat that. These guys are all over the place. Also, if there were a dead fish or something like that, they would eat on that too. So that's those snails. Now here, we found another worm. It's called a parchment tube worm. It lives inside a tube under the sand. But if you look closely, it's got some really cool adaptation. Look at that. It picks up pieces of shell and decorates its tube, camouflages its tube with little pieces of shell and whatever else it finds in the marine environment. Pretty cool. All right. Well, we're going to keep looking and see what else we can find. All right. One last animal we want to show you is actually a live clam. We didn't find any, but this one. It's pretty small, but clams have two shells or valves. So these are called bivalves. Bi means two. And so this is the animal that's living inside, and it's closed up until the water is covering it up. And they'll burrow down into the sand. Oh, there goes an oyster catcher. And they will just stay burrowed in the sand, except they have a tube that sticks out to filter feed. So this guy's still alive. So we're going to toss him back into the water so he can keep filtering water and getting bigger and bigger. So there's lots of different types of clams. Oysters are a type of bivalve, and most people know about oysters because they like to eat them. So the animals like to eat them too. So, all right, we're going to keep searching. Maybe we'll find some more animals. All right. All right, we found another cool shell here. This one's not alive anymore. This is a type of whelk, which is a type of snail. This is called a pear whelk. And these would feed on those little worms and on the small clams that we were finding in the mud. So pretty neat. We're gonna leave this here for a shell collector to collect. That's a pretty neat shell to find here. All right, looks like other fishermen are coming near. It's almost, we're wrapping up our little experience here. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this virtual field trip. I know it's not quite the same, but next year, hopefully we'll get out to the beaches and we'll do some seining and sieving and see what kinds of cool animals we can find. So stay safe and stay wild. We'll talk to you soon. Now, we're gonna look at this little tiny island. There's not much to it, but so you can see the connection between the seagrasses and the estuary. If you look out there, the big trees are the mangrove trees. We talked about it in another earlier video. You also have the seagrasses, which are the dark spots. Then you have the mud flats, the intertidal zone, and then right now the tide's coming up. Here you can see the connection between the sea and the land. And here we actually have some land being formed. So you've got beach plants. These up here are sea oats and inkberry and other plants that live on the beach. And they're tough plants. And then here you've got some mangroves that are starting to colonize the island. Now, if the island's high enough, you'll get some different types of plants that are growing right on top of the little island. Now let's see if you guys remember your mangroves. Now the other thing, you can see the connection between a healthy estuary and our economy. Look, people are fishing. So billions of dollars are spent on boats and fishing equipment and tackle, and they are a big important part of our economy. Is the health of the environment is producing economic benefits. Like this gentleman here on a Sunday morning out fishing. He's wondering what I'm talking about. So let's take a look at our plants. All right, so here's your chance to practice your mangroves. We have all three different types of mangrove trees growing right here. This is the easy one. This is the one with the arching red prop roots. You remember that one? That one is the red mangrove. They're just getting started on this island. Now, if you remember, there's a mangrove that grows a little bit further away from the water's edge, has the gray, kind of more elliptical leaves. Let's see if we can find one. Here's one, it's about to flower. Remember, this one is all silvery on the back. You remember? That's all salt on the back. Remember what you do with that? You can actually lick that, okay? That tells you that this is a black mangrove. And let's see, oh, perfect. I couldn't have planned this any better. Look at this one. You guys recognize this one? This has the rounded leaves, has the little dimple on the top. This is the white mangrove. Look at that. So we've got the red, black, and white mangroves all growing right here on this little island. And look, you can even see the dead man's fingers, right? The snorkel tubes sticking up. These are from the black mangrove. Remember that? Right here. If you look closely, these actually have oysters growing on them. Look at that. There's actually oysters growing on them. Pretty cool. I hope you guys enjoyed our virtual beach field trip, and we look forward to seeing you next fall. Have a wonderful and safe summer.